Yes, I saw the video going around from the BBC showing that honey badger who can escape from pretty much any enclosure no matter how secure. The problem is, I'm not the only one on the AFT team that saw it. Jungle caught wind of it after seeing a post by a fan online, and after watching the video, he got a brilliant idea. And of course by brilliant, I mean re-fucking-tarded. Turns out he enlisted Stanley's help in raising some extra cash for his idiotic and ill-fated at best Jungleland adult sex-themed fun park idea. So last night after chow, the two of them snuck off to open some jangy-ass sideshow featuring Stanley the Honey Badger, Master of Escape, which was basically just a crappy stage made out of some risers lit up by a pair of work lights Jungle had swiped from the motor pool. All this was set up just off the highway in that abandoned Big Lots parking lot that Jungle keeps claiming he has eminent domain ownership of because he says that he's 1/16th Cherokee Indian, which he isn't, and that's not even what eminent domain means, nor how it works. Jungle is just a moron. But back to the story. Jungle makes a big speech to the crowd that is gathered and holds Stanley up over his head, telling them that they're about to be amazed and astonished by this creature that no prison or set of manacles can contain. Then Jungle crams Stanley into a filthy pillowcase that he got at Goodwill, probably along with the cologne that he's always wearing, that's supposed to be a straitjacket, and then puts that into some beat-up cat carrier that he chained shut with a bunch of padlocks and snow chains that he also swiped from the motor pool. The thing is, Stanley isn't even in the cat carrier or the pillowcase at this point. Jungle swapped him out with some greasy, mangy possum he found sleeping near one of the dumpsters at the far end of the parking lot, so Stanley could sneak off and use his escape skills in reverse to break into the crowd of people's nearby parked vehicles and steal their cell phones and iPods and whatnot so that he and Jungle could pawn them and split the cash. That furry little scumbag. The only problem is that dumbass Jungle didn't take into account that where there's one possum living in, under, or behind a dumpster, there are probably a lot more. And there were. Turns out the one Jungle grabbed was only a baby, and all its squealing and carrying on while it was trying to get out of that filthy pillowcase alerted the rest of its family that something was wrong. And before you knew it, dozens of fat, ravenous, and generally pissed off abandoned Big Lots parking lot possums, which really are the worst kind, anyone will tell you, descended on Jungle and the crowd of slack-jawed onlookers, just biting the shit out of people's ankles, jumping on their backs and trying to claw off their faces, really going in for the kill. And of course at this point, Jungle hightails it out of there at the first sign of trouble, leaving these poor dumb bastards who just wanted to see a honey badger escape from a filthy pillowcase in a parking lot to be eaten alive and bitten to death by hordes of dumpster vermin. Luckily, Stanley's super senses picked up on all this commotion, and even though the furry little shitbag was in the middle of committing multiple simultaneous misdemeanors and or felonies at Jungle's behest, he headed back into the fray to kick some possum ass. Stanley dove in there, claws and teeth flashing, ripping to bits anything with a pink nose, bald, semi-prehensile tail, and large canine teeth. I mean, the whole thing was over in less than a minute, or at least Stanley thought it was. After beating these creatures to death, Stanley dusted himself off and started to make his way over to the dumpsters where his enemies had emerged from to see if they left any tasty treats behind. And that's when he saw it. The huge, looming shadow of one of the most rare and terrifying sights in all of the animal kingdom, Opossum Voltron. You see, when Stanley first attacked, it was over so quickly because his adversaries were merely playing dead, or possum as it's better known, so they could harness their strength to form a giant 30-foot tall warrior made out of, well, gross, abandoned Big Lots parking lot possums. And not only that, there were two of them. But Stanley didn't back down. He just gritted his crooked little teeth and made a running leap for the closest one, but to no avail because he was quickly swatted down to the asphalt below. And again, Stanley got up, charged, leapt, and was bashed back by these twin amalgamated marsupial nightmares. Kicking him, punching him, toying with him like a rag doll, it began to look pretty bleak and hopeless, like maybe Stanley had seen his last fight. And then, just as the battered little heap of badger was picked up off the ground by both giant beasts at once, and yanked back and forth in a tug-of-war that could only end in him being torn in half, a faint whirring and beeping could be heard in the distance, and it was getting closer and closer. Until, at the end of the parking lot, you could see a forklift being piloted by none other than Jungle, careening straight towards Stanley's pair of beastly tormentors' crotches. And just before the forklift made contact with these twin oversized abominations' ball sacks, Jungle and Stanley dove free and rolled underneath Jungle's parked sweet-ass El Camino that was actually a friend of a friend's brother-in-law's who was out of town. And the half-dozen claymores Jungle at 100-mile-an-hour taped to the forklift forks went off, blowing both of Stanley's aggressors and their junk to the high heavens, leaving Jungle and Stanley unharmed, but also leaving that parking lot covered in a couple thousand pounds and gallons of possum guts and entrails that Jungle immediately started to try and figure out how to turn into jerky so that he could turn a profit, and which Stanley found to be quite delicious. Because, well, he likes to eat gross shit. And that's the story of Stanley, the master escape artist, and how he took on the two Opossum Voltrons. Problem solved, problem staying solved. Rangers lead the way.